And a live look at the Grosbeek Canadian War Cemetery in the Netherlands, where a commemorative ceremony is being held to mark the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the Netherlands. The ceremony is honoring the Canadian soldiers who lost their lives in the fight for freedom. And joining me now is Anthony Wilson-Smith, President and CEO at Historica Canada. Anthony, good morning. Thank you for being here today.
My pleasure. Good morning.
So let's talk about this. Canada's role specifically in liberating the Netherlands during the Second World War. Walk us through what the role Canada played.
Probably our single most shining moment, although it came with a pretty heavy price. We had more than 100,000 Canadian military, meaning Air Force, Navy, as well as Army, serving in that campaign, which ran from September of 44 until really the close of the war in May of 45. More than 6,000 dead, more than 13,000 wounded or killed. One of the toughest stretches of fighting in the war. They had to come down a 70 or 80 kilometer estuary by the English Channel, and it's all, for anybody who's ever been there, it's all flooded land, and it's just soggy, and you stick wherever you go, and it's very tough. And they're of course fighting a very desperate German army, so very, very hard.
Now, the liberation of the Netherlands is considered one of Canada's major military contributions. Why is this?
Well, for the Dutch, they paid an enormous price. I mean, a very small country. In the end, more than 300,000 of them died, some of them in concentration camps. But in the final winter, when the Canadian troops started advancing, still known as the Hunger Winter there, 20,000 Dutch people starved because the Germans just basically cut off supplies to give to themselves and also out of vindictiveness. So not only did we fight our way through and really lead the forces that did that, but there were also parachute drops of food and supplies that really literally saved lives. So by the time that we arrived, they were and still continue to be, as we see today, seen as saviors.
And this liberation, and especially the 80th anniversary of it, why is that significant, both for Canada and the Netherlands?
Well, first of all, there still are, I guess remarkably, there still are some remaining veterans from the war. Not a lot, but it's important, of course, to pay service while they're here. If anything, in a time of, very intense global potential conflict, awareness of that grows. But they've always felt it. I remember being there years ago, just driving at random through a small village by the Channel, going to where the cenotaph would be in the middle of town. And rather than the usual marker that you'd see in almost any country, there was a Canadian tank that had been left since the war. And it was a point of absolute reverence. And of course, as any Canadian who's been there knows, you will never be better received in another country than when you say you're Canadian in the Netherlands.
Our time has run out. Anthony, unfortunately, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate all of your insights. That is Anthony Wilson-Smith, President and CEO at Historica Canada.